Hi, my name is Lily. This is my research application presentation about how understanding trauma and PTSD will make me a better teacher. So, my first article was an article that is called Traumatized Children's Perspectives on Their Lived Experience, a Review. So, an overview of this article is that it basically explored how children respond and perceive traumatic experiences through databases like PubMed, ProQuest, and Web of Science. Basically, they did qualitative studies that were completed on children 18 or younger and focused on their stories and perspectives. And some main points that this article included were how trauma has a large impact on routine, school, and personal relationships. And children reported negative emotions associated with trauma, and how children with trauma have very specific needs and coping strategies that they turn to when they're going through a traumatic situation. So, the first thing that this article taught me was that giving children a voice will help them, aid them in their traumatic situations. So the article said understanding children's perceptions of their own traumas is essential to help them adjust to their traumatic experiences. So by being a teacher, it is my job to create an emotionally safe and comfortable environment where each child feels comfortable expressing their needs and emotions. And by doing this, I can reach out and try to understand a kid's story and the trauma that they have been through and let them know that I want to help. And the article also explained how children articulate their feelings more when they are given space to trust someone. So slowly but surely doing activities that help kids be more aware of their feelings will give them a chance to express their voice, for example, through writing assignments or letting them choose a topic that they want to talk about, things like that. And the psychological effects of trauma are described in children as there were various negative feelings that were found to be directly related to trauma, such as loss, fright, loneliness, stress, guilt, shame, helplessness, isolation, shock, and being scared, and as well as fear, anger, worry, and a sadness were more frequently mentioned in all studies. So knowing how trauma psychologically affects kids helps me understand someone that I teach better. For example, if a kid is super angry and little things make them extremely angry, I can provide support to that and attention and attentiveness to their emotional needs and make it easier for them to let those feelings out safely in my classroom instead of yelling and being angry. Instead, helping them release those feelings through art, writing, music, and activities where they can release it in a safer way. And this article also helped me have better empathy and understanding. So it helped me understand trauma from a child's perspective and understand that their behavior may be a cry for help and a coping mechanism for them. The article says traumatized children experience disruptions in their daily lives, such as developing poor appetite, difficulty with school comprehension, communication problems, and disturbances in their daily routines. So certain kids may need help with more basic things, like maybe they have a really hard time eating, they need extra help for assignments or seeing a counselor, and maybe they have a hard time with routine, so trying to create a healthy routine for them. This article said that those who experienced conflict-related trauma reported having difficulty connecting with others and preferred keeping people at a distance because they felt like they were being looked down upon and developed a lack of trust for others and had a fear or an expectation of being hurt. So this helps me understand that kids who are really closed off and emotionally unavailable may just be really scared to open up because the only time that they have opened up, they've been hurt. So it is up to me to show them that they are worthy of having friends, being close, and showing that it's okay to be close and that it's safe, and that's up to me to try and do that for them. I also learned some trauma-informed teaching strategies. Well, I developed some through this article. It said early exposure to social activities seem helpful for children in overcoming their trauma and enhanced feelings of belonging and a sense of commitment to social issues. Talking to others, such as family members, friends, and seeking support were reported to be particularly helpful in dealing with negative feelings. So this helped me understand how I can support my students through teaching. In terms of support, the article said when support was perceived as pleasant and good, it has a positive effect on children getting through the traumatic experience. So by creating a safe environment where I encourage students to write, work with their peers, and help them feel comfortable, exposing them to social activities, they can slowly learn how to support others and be supported. And in my classroom, I want to include a calming corner, affirmation station, and daily brain breaks where we listen to calming music, meditate, that type of thing. So students who are going through traumatic events can ease negative feelings and maybe have some emotional regulation and implement some strategies that they can use outside of the classroom. By offering choices and giving students power, it may help them feel a sense of belonging and purpose, like they matter, they have a voice, and they can choose what they want to talk about, what they want to do, that type of thing. And then also, instead of focusing on what a child is doing wrong, what they're doing, that is bad, trying to make them feel good about what they're doing right, will encourage that behavior rather than the wrong behavior. And understanding why they are acting that way in the first place instead of punishing them is what will get you a better result instead of immediately punishing them, and help them feel more safe. And this is supported by the quote that says, "This evidence highlights the need to provide easily accessible trauma-specific services and interventions that help them understand and better cope with their negative psychological responses and related stress towards the traumatic experiences." So also in this article, it showed the emphasis and importance of early identification of trauma in children. So the earlier you can provide help and support and understanding, the better they will be later on. And the article mentioned children's distress levels can be reduced when being supported by peers and other social contacts with open sharing, psychological comfort, empathy, and reassurance. So if a child is having a traumatic experience or is going through it, providing a positive environment may subside the effects of that. Making use of positive thinking, mainly focusing on positive outcomes and using positive affirmations, might help children to calm down and overcome some distressing memories. And by understanding the behavior that they are exhibiting, by understanding the behavior that they may be exhibiting may indicate a traumatic situation is occurring. The faster you can provide early intervention to those children and provide services earlier, you can also collaborate with counselors and resources in the school that can provide extra help if they need it, in an even more emotionally safe environment, not just in your classroom, but in their school in general. So overall, this article was a study conducted on children 18 and younger, exploring how their trauma affected their life, and it was found that trauma can interrupt daily life activities and routines, and there are signs of trauma physically and psychologically. Kids need different things after experiencing trauma than kids who did not experience trauma, and some may seek out negative coping strategies, and it is possible for you to aid post-traumatic growth by catering to their physical and emotional needs and providing targeted support and early intervention. And it is also important to help them avoid negative coping skills and avoidance, but also instead providing them a safe environment to help them emotionally be able to open up and encourage healthy coping skills. So traumatic growth is possible, and as a teacher, it is my job to help them find purpose and joy and have a positive outlook. So I learned how important I am in aiding growth to the kids who need it and providing support that they need to get through a traumatic situation and eventually overcome that traumatic situation. So my next article was called "Shadows of Trauma, an Umbrella Review of Prevalence and Risk Factors of PTSD in Children." So this article highlights the prevalence of PTSD in children through systematic review and meta-analysis. This article reviews key risk factors for kids who have PTSD and emphasizes the importance of early intervention support system and PTSD screenings. The article also identified previous research inconsistencies and how further research is effectively meeting the needs of this vulnerable population and fills a critical void in the research landscape. So this article helped me understand PTSD in the classroom. It says it emphasized how trauma from events like violence, disasters, abuse, and loss can cause severe impact of PTSD on young people's mental, physical, social, and academic well-being. PTSD can impact anyone, but it was linked to age, gender, location, education level, and the cause of trauma, personal or family history of mental illness, and social support. So understanding the ways PTSD can develop in adolescents helped me understand the children in my future classroom more, and this will help me incorporate ways to create a safe environment where each one of my kids can speak about their story and how it affected them. Also, through the studies in this article, types of prevalent trauma was identified, which is general trauma, COVID-19, political violence, conflict, and natural disasters, which are all very prevalent events in our society currently. So understanding how PTSD can develop through cultural and world issues gives me the opportunity to be more culturally aware as a teacher and understand how events outside of our classroom are affecting the kids in my classroom. The PTSD prevalence in children was also 25%, which is a relatively large amount about 1 in 4 kids, and being aware of how PTSD, how many kids it affects, will help me be able to understand how a lot of kids in my classroom will probably have PTSD or be at risk for developing it, and how I can help them. So this helped me identify early signs and high-risk profiles, which it said, moreover, female gender proximity to a trauma event, pre-existing psychiatric disorders, parental psychopathology, low social support, duration of trauma, severity of pain from trauma, and comorbid mental illness. So those are all higher risk profiles. So being aware of these helps me be more vigilant of the kids in my class and what they may be exhibiting, and if that aligns with this. And for example, if I see a withdrawn, perfectionist, very quiet girl in my class who may be distressed, I maybe, look out for that student and provide some extra targeted support for her. If one of my students loses a parent throughout the year, I will be more aware that they may start detaching from others, lose interest in learning, and I can provide them with, grief support as well as trauma-targeted teaching strategies. So in my classroom, it is also so important to emphasize emotional safety. The article said, females may be more likely to internalize their emotions, leading to a higher incidence of PTSD symptoms. Knowing this helps me understand that I may need to emphasize emotional vulnerability and safety to girls in my class because they are more prone to PTSD, internalizing PTSD. Also, the article exclaimed that this underscores the need for targeted interventions that address grief and loss in therapeutic settings. The interplay of these risk factors emphasizes the need for comprehensive approaches to prevention and intervention for PTSD in children and adolescents. So by identifying signs of PTSD early, I can provide targeted interventions for the kids going through grief or loss in my classroom. And then now I'm going to talk about classroom strategies. So the article said low social support has been consistently associated with higher rates of PTSD among children and adolescents. Supportive relationships with family, peers, and community members can act as a protective factor, helping children process traumatic experiences and mitigate the psychological impact. The classroom is such a wonderful opportunity to foster a sense of community. Promoting friendship, partner work, supportive talk, emotional closeness, and therapeutic approaches to learning will help the kids feel like they belong to a community and provide supportive relationships. The article quotes, integrated care models that combine mental health services with primary care should be promoted to ensure comprehensive care addressing both physical and psychological needs. In my classroom, I can provide a safe place where all of these needs are getting met through writing breaks, routines, active and stimulating lessons, calming strategies, cooperative learning, social connection, and active listening. So, in the study within the article, it was found that PTSD is very prevalent in children and adolescents and is almost comparable to adults, such as veterans. And with the state of the world, with how much poverty, natural disasters, just a lot of chaos, PTSD could even be higher by the time that I'm a teacher, so that's also, important to be aware of. PTSD has already been shown to have increased over time, 28% in SRMAs published in the last 5 years. The study did say while a sufficient number of SMRAs were found to facilitate a robust meta-analysis of the prevalence of PTSD, the search yielded only 2 SMRAs specifically addressed the associated risk factors. So this just means that maybe in future studies, they will have more unlimited factor research and can provide more substantial research with more groups. But however, the study did say our analysis reveals a pooled prevalence estimate of a 25%, indicating that a significant portion of children and adolescents exposed to trauma develop PTSD. This just shows how important my position is as a teacher to provide targeted support in my classroom and help kids with the intensity of psychological impact of trauma and help minimize that. And as a future teacher, this article just made me way more aware of the prevalence of PTSD and becoming more informed about how I can help them through collaborative work, early intervention, and understand how to cater to the needs of different traumatic situations, different risk profiles, all of that, and overall just providing the support needed to help kids get through traumatic situations, but also help them minimize the impact of the traumatic situations, hopefully later on in life, through the emotional safety and support that I provide in my classroom. So that is my research presentation.